सर आप अनम्यूट करके बोलना शुरू कर सकते हैं. You can start. Chidanandji, you can start.
Yes. Good evening, friends. I'm seeing all of you after a few weeks, and I'm delighted to join you in one more discussion with some loud thinking on the part of many of us. And we have a simple but important topic this evening, and that is about answering a question versus holding a question. This has been inspired by many instances where Krishnaji asks the audience a question, and typically somebody in the audience is too eager to answer. They are so fast. They just want to come out with some reply. And Krishnaji would very softly and lovingly say to them, "Sir, hold on, sir. Hold the question. Please don't answer." And that was so fascinating to me on early occasions. For so many other places we generally see when the speaker asks a question and somebody in the audience answers quickly, we many places see the speaker appreciates that response, especially if the answer is a sensible one. We find speakers saying, "That's wonderful, you have answered it so good," and so on. But here was Krishnaji saying to the members of the audience, "Sir, please do not answer." If the audience was not supposed to answer, then why did the speaker ask the question at all? So for newcomers, it might be quite puzzling why Krishnaji asks a question and why he objects to anybody answering it. However, that is where you and I take some time to understand the depth, the profoundness of how Krishnaji looks at life itself. So what is this big deal about not answering the question, but holding the question, staying with the question? So we will dwell on that. In simple terms, from my side, I would like to say that staying with the question, holding the question, not hurrying up with an answer, opens various possibilities. First of all, what is the merit of staying with the question? The merit could be as simple as when we do not hastily answer the question, but stay with the question, we are able to observe the content of that question or various life scenarios which the question brings forth. We are able to observe it in greater detail. We may be intellectually well exposed, we may have read many books, we may have studied some organized religions, philosophy, non-dual, dual, qualified dual, or the philosophies of Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Sufism, and so on. There are so much of philosophy in this world, and some of us might be very learned in some of those schools. But that is where there is a trap. That is where our own knowledge becomes a blocking factor. Our own knowledge of philosophy, of the books we have read, sometimes the travel that we undertook, places we went, and maybe we met some eminent people, we met celebrities, and all that gets into our head. I have traveled, I know everything. I ask me anything, I am the walking encyclopedia, and so on. We carry around us, you know, what is that? We have some air about us. So I may be dramatized a little bit. I can see some faces smiling, but the little smiling is good, I guess. But in serious terms, friends, our mind is conditioned, and staying with the question helps us see our own conditioned thinking. After all, the domain of thought has been compared by some wise people with a deep well. A deep well. Our mind is like a deep well, and normally we see just the surface. We need to see, I'm not talking of somebody else's mind, we need to see our own mind or the domain of our own thought processes in certain greater detail, in certain greater depth. That is what will be made possible in staying with the question. And this issue is so valid in simple scenarios like interpersonal relationships. Maybe a husband and a wife are in conflict. Both of them are arguing vehemently their own sides. And typically, the husband goes on and on, doesn't see the angle of view of the wife. The wife goes on and does not see the angle of view of the husband. Two people, maybe parents and children, or the boss and the subordinate, so on and so forth. Sometimes in so-called Krishnamurti dialogues, some speakers like me go on and on. And, you know, if some people have a different view, we don't even let them complete their sentence. People like me, let me blame myself. Why go after anybody else? Somebody is trying to say something. I may say, hold on, let me tell you, let me explain to you. I tell you. First, I should listen. So, in a dialogue too, there is a high risk of everybody being caught in their own thoughts. So, staying with the question, when, let's say, a speaker asks a question, or our spouse, our children ask a question, makes room for grasping the question in all its breadth. There was a statement by the Western thinker Abraham Maslow, and a bit humorous statement. A man who is good with the hammer thinks of every problem as though it is a nail. He is good with hammer, and every problem for him is a nail to be hammered. But life is much more than a nail or any other thing for that matter. Therefore, even between organized religions, Eastern religions, Western religions, and in this East, our country, there are so many sects, so many traditions. We have some very ancient religions on the soil of India. We know that some of the religions are so old, even the scholars in that religion do not know when it all began. They say from time immemorial. And then there are the Western religions, Judaism, then came Christianity, then came Islam. These have been historically dated. They have been. In fact, Judaism, I'm sorry, may not be dated. It seems to be one of the very ancient religions. Jesus Christ himself was a Jew, but then he brought forth Christianity. So, when organized religions fight and there is violence, there is bloodbath, so much of bloodshed. What goes on is a certain blindness, certain deafness to what the other party is saying. Even within every religion, you have so many divisions, Protestants and Catholics, Shiites, Shia and Sunni Muslims, and in Hinduism, the followers of Shiva, followers of Vishnu. I need not go into more example. Anywhere you go, there are conflicts. And one of the basic issues is very poor even scholars are in listening. Somebody asks a question, they hastily answer it. They seem to know the answer to every question. But the question in this matter is, have they understood the question of the questioner? So, a related issue here I would like to bring forth before you is because it is said in the teachings, do not hastily answer the question, stay with the question. Is that something to be followed religiously? Somebody asks a question, and for the sake of staying with the question, I just do not answer. Somebody asks, what is the time? I see the clock, it is 6:12. And I remember, oh, the teachings say, don't answer the question hurriedly. So I look at the clock, I look at my wristwatch. Oh my God, I am supposed to stay with the question, not answer so hurriedly. By then 6:12 becomes 6:15. Then I say, you know, my friend, it is 6:15. That is stupid. If anybody stays with the question, as the colloquial or slang expression goes, for the heck of staying with the question, that is stupid. Therefore, I would caution that this business of staying with the question requires a certain maturity, certain alertness. With regard to very many functional questions, there is absolutely no reason to stay with the question. Somebody asks you, what is the capital of your country? Why should you stay with the question? They say New Delhi. If somebody asks, what's the name of this new president in United States? They say Joe Biden. These are all general functional stuff, like I gave the example of somebody asking, what's the time? But someone says, why do you think that some people imagine or insist that everybody in India should learn Hindi, and some others object to it very vehemently? Why do they do that? In such matters where it is a bit of a delicate issue, it's a debated issue, and who knows, the person asking the question on that particular day could already be having certain very rigid opinion. Somebody might be already riding on a high wave of for Hindi or against Hindi. In such a case, even if we have read voluminous books on whether Hindi should be learnt by every Indian, even if we have a lot of knowledge, we need to perceive the air. We need to feel what is behind that question. Is there some anger already? Is there some resentment? Is there some looking down at those who either oppose Hindi or those who ask for Hindi? Are there some emotional, dimensions? One needs to be aware of it. Therefore, in interpersonal relationship, in interorganizational matters, they don't have to be religious only, because humanity gets divided on various grounds. Religions are one major area where there is a fight, but there is fight over language, there is fight over water of rivers, there is fight over territory, border, land, and so on. Now, one more dimension I've tried to open in this matter of staying with the question is sometimes you and I get so intellectual because we have read or heard or whatever. We not only answer questions rapidly, but also raise questions one after another. We raise questions one after another, maybe in a discussion, maybe in a dialogue, and one has to observe carefully what makes us raise a number of questions like bullets coming from a machine gun. Is it really out of passion for truth, to find the truth, or is it some kind of intellectual unrest? Therefore, friends, this topic of this evening is closely related to, to being aware, being attentive to maybe a question that has come towards us, or maybe a question that we ourselves are raising. Hasten slowly, someone said. In life, you can't afford to lie back and waste time. So we need to get up and get going. Therefore, hasten. But to hasten doesn't mean you become inattentive. You hurry up in such a way that you trample upon others' space and so on. Therefore, it was said very wittily, hasten slowly, hurry up slowly, a very thought provoking expression. So, I will once more raise the issue, can everybody stay with the question? Can everybody hold a question that is asked? If someone who is unable to explore, unable to examine, if someone who is unable to get going with the broader angle of view, then if that person, for the sake of staying with the question, simply stays with the question, I'm afraid that person will be staying in some kind of stupid silence. Because exploring or going into various aspects of a question requires its own skill, its own maturity. We do not want to say that some are mature, some are immature. We don't want to go about that in a haphazard manner, as though, there is some yardstick or there is some quick way to find out who is eligible for self-inquiry. As you know, in all organized religions, not only Hinduism, various kinds of divisions were made, various kinds of, those who are supposed to be fit and those who are supposed to be unfit. If in Hinduism these caste divisions came into existence, in various other religions, other criteria. I've heard that M.K. Gandhi, either in South Africa or in England, once seriously thought of becoming a Christian because he felt, oh my, Hinduism has all these caste divisions. I will become a Christian where all are children of God or something. And one Sunday morning, he went to a certain church to first attend a service there and probably then propose to convert himself into Christianity. But to his shock, at the entrance of that church stood a tall white man. He very lovingly, quote and unquote, lovingly said to M.K. Gandhi, oh, nice of you to come to this church. But for people with color, there is the other church on next road. Please go there. Gandhiji was shocked. Oh, these people say there is no caste, but they have a black church and a white church and maybe some other churches. Then he pondered more. So all kinds of divisions come about, which is again a mischief of thought, but that doesn't mean that just superficially we make a statement. I don't believe in any divisions, all are equal. All are not equal to at a given point of time. So who is mature, who is immature, or very specifically in this evening's context, who can stay with the question and who will only waste time by staying with the question is not for anybody to decide. One doesn't have the skill by discussion, by dialogue. One can always develop the skill. Staying with the question is, I already said, very closely related to living in attention, in awareness. If only we live in attention, several are the wonderful benefits. I would propose that staying with the question and not hastily answering. Sometimes somebody, the teacher is asking at the left side of the audience, and if we are not aware, we are sitting on the right side, we get up and answer because we are not aware that the speaker has turned towards the left side of the hall and is asking those people some question. We sitting on the right side of the hall, completely unaware of the directionality of that question, get up and try to answer. So these things happen, and I suppose I am saying now, when we are truly attentive, many of these flaws, many of these errors do not take place. We listen to the question, we stay with the question, and you know what? It can actually promote certain humility, certain you know, acceptance of our being like anybody else. Just because I have, I don't, suppose I have a PhD in philosophy from Banaras Hindu University. Just because I am Dr. So and so from a esteemed university, I don't become higher, I don't become greater. So when a speaker asks a question and I am in the audience, let us say, I don't have a more right to answer it. I wait a little, I look around. Somebody else perhaps has something to say. And to do so, there is requirement of humility. In fact, true humility, please do not think it is um, thinking of ourselves as very common. Actually, it's neither common nor uncommon. True humility is where you do not carry a sense of superiority. You neither label yourself as superior nor put a label on yourself as I am nobody here. All these people are very learned. You don't have to, call them learned and superior. Without thinking about who is superior and who is inferior, is it possible for us to examine the question, whether there are some hidden dimensions to the question? Maybe the speaker has asked a question which superficially means something, but has more meanings if you explore. Therefore, a question can be looked at very carefully. I would also add to the quality of humility, the quality of broad-mindedness. If we stay with the question rather than answering the question, by the way, this staying with the question or answering the question with answering the question do not necessarily apply only to the audience. Sometimes audience asks a question and the speaker, has the option to just answer it going by the habitual memory or pauses, and he or she knows how much to pause, as we already looked into it. For the sake of pausing, one should not pause. One pauses only when one sees there is some scope for a further examination. when one sees scope for further exercise, it's like driving on a road. You, you start from your house, you start driving on the road. And if I ask you at that time, today are you going to drive fast or are you going to drive slow? Will you not answer? It depends on the traffic. And on Indian roads in smaller towns, sometimes it also depends on whether some stray cattle are on the road, some dog or cat is passing, crossing the road. So just as going slow happens when the driver sees, oh, a cat is crossing the road, he goes slow. Just that's a very gross example. Likewise, staying with the question happens not just because it is a dictum, not because it is an instruction. When somebody asks a question, don't answer immediately, not because such an instruction is given, but there is a question, maybe from a child or maybe from a 85-year-old scholar. Doesn't matter. If our intelligence notices that this question that is asked has certain scope for various further or other aspects, then one stays with the question. There is much merit in staying with the question, and therefore we may as well say that one examines the question, and what is more, without going into any example, sometimes when we examine a question, the question itself may dissolve. You may find that this question it doesn't need to be answered at all. Or in mystic language, it is also said, sometimes when we examine a question, we disappear, we vanish. The questioner may vanish, or the one to whom the question is put may vanish, because certain profound questions do have the capacity in them to shake us at our roots. My identity, my pride, or my hurt, my be feeling inferior, or anything. In the light of the question, because questions have power, in the light of the question, in the heat of the question, the individuality in me may vanish also. Therefore, friends, I would conclude my submission saying that not mechanically, but out of intelligence, out of seeing more and more possibilities, we need to learn to stay with a question, go slow about it, and then in that staying with the question, which is also called holding the question rather than answering, there is tremendous scope for you and me to uncondition ourselves, to decondition ourselves, to get out of the shell or the prison of habits, habitual responses. And habit is bondage. Freedom from habit is, in fact, freedom. Let me pause here, and I will be looking forward to other views, other inputs from my good friends here. Thank you.
After Harshad Parikh, sir, you mind if I ask Harshad Parikh first and then other opinion?
Good idea.
Harshad Parikh, sir, please unmute and say.
Yeah. Okay. Are you able to hear?
Yes, sir. We are very much.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Swamiji. Very, very good talk. Very simple and direct and impersonal. But I cannot speak like that. My way is different. I speak from what I feel and about this questioning. Krishnaji asked many, many questions in his talks, in his dialogues. And the first book which Krishnaji, which I read of Krishnaji, and he was asking some questions like, why do you think of yourself as a Hindu or Indian or Chinese or American? I had not asked such questions myself, but Krishnaji's questions made me look into myself. And I said, yes, why do I think of myself as Hindu or Indian? Because I was in America at that time, and it was really preventing me to see people without this division of religion, nationality. So when I looked within myself, I felt that yes, why do I consider myself as a Hindu or Indian? And Krishnaji was saying that we are all human beings and psychologically we are not different. All human beings go through problems of psychological nature like fear or anger, loneliness. And so when I read that, I said, is it really like this that all human beings are like going through these problems? Because I was so much occupied with my own problems that I was not really looking around. But Krishnaji's questions made me look around, and I saw that Americans were lonely and having many, many problems in their own country. So I verified that we are human beings and psychologically we are not different. And when I really realized it, not intellectually, it began to open me up to people of all different nationality, religion. I lived with them. I shared apartments with them. And I, much deeper than that, is Krishnaji's question like, from where do these problems arise? And he was saying that our problems come from thinking, and from thinking comes this sense of I or me. And then this duality starts between thinker and thought. And that was really very strange what Krishnaji said. And I felt, is it really like that? What I call this I or me, is it coming from thinking? And how can I really verify it? So, if a person wants to verify from where this sense of I or me comes, one has to sit alone quietly and with a great intensity look inside and pick up the beginning of a thought. So I was a student at that time. I had an office. So I went to my office, sat on a chair. I asked this question, then became very intensely aware of what is happening within. And my mind really stopped. And it was a wonderful feeling of having no thinking, no sense of I, but the sense is alert. And I said, yes, what Krishnaji is saying is true, that our problems are arising from thinking which we have really not looked at. So this Krishnaji's question is also asked by Raman Maharshi also, who am I? And that is the most fundamental question, that what is this thing which is thinking? And Descartes said that because I think, therefore I am. But I feel that he had really not looked before thinking, what is it, that state? And once a person comes to that realization that there is nothing actually within us, no thoughts, and senses are functioning properly, and in that state, there are no problems. It's a wonderful feeling of freedom from the self. And once it is felt really, not intellectually, then it becomes very interesting every time to look inside. And every time one looks, there is nothing there, and its thinking stops. But then when we lose that looking, thinking will come again, and the thinking will go on for some time. And from that, some problems may come, some memories come. But then again, we become aware of this thinking process. Then the thinking again comes to stop. And this is a kind of uh, game one can play initially. And one can, without asking question, I feel one can look whatever is happening, because when you ask a question, then you go in a particular direction. And like, what is fear? Or why there is anger or jealousy? Then you go in a certain direction, but one has to go at the root from where everything, all these problems arise. And that is, what is this thing which we call I? Who am I? And when it is a genuine question, the mind really stops. And then something may come. And then there is looking at what is unfolding in the mind. That is a direct contact with our own self. That means we begin to realize when we get angry that the anger is arising, when there is a fear or jealousy. One has to be in that state of looking, in which everything is, all these feelings are unfolding. And so that is what it is. These teachings are is about that choiceless awareness, in which we can see unfolding of problems which arise in relationship, not when we are alone, but also when we are talking with friends or husband or wife or boss. So that acute sense of ongoing effortless awareness is the real thing which dissolves the problem at its root. And that is why Krishna ji said, in the light of awareness, all problems created by thinking get dissolved. So my mind is not a questioning mind, I feel. My mind is more like a seeing clearly. And when we begin to see clearly our own mind, we begin to see clearly the objects in nature also very clearly. And we can see the tree or the sunset or the stars or the smile of a child or the bright light sparkling on a lake. Everything looks very new, fresh in the light of this awareness. So when there is a genuine awareness of what is happening, I feel that there are some changes begin to happen in our body. and in the quality of the brain. We can really feel it. And that uh, is what Krishnaji's teachings. And Krishnaji asked many beautiful questions like, is thought love or is jealousy or fear? Can there be such feelings, negative, damaging feelings in what we call love? So one has to really look when such feelings arise. And then many people use Krishnamurti's method of asking question. So Krishnaji asked a very good question. And he said, is Krishnamurti acting as a drug? That means every time you have a problem, you open a book like Gandhiji used to open Bhagavad Gita to find answer to his problem. So similarly, people who are attracted to Krishnamurti teachings, they also begin to find answers in the Krishnamurti's teachings by reading Krishnamurti's words. Maybe it can help temporarily that, okay, Krishnaji answered some question, but one has to do it for oneself and forgetting everything what Krishnaji has said. And that is why he said real freedom is the freedom from knowledge. All knowledge acquired by Krishnamurti about what we have learned from the tradition, from Gita or Upanishad, all that. And what I like about Krishnamurti, he talked about the art of looking, listening, and learning. And he asked even to children in Rishi Valley School, how do you look at a tree or your friend? And these are tremendous questions. If people can really understand why he was asking this question, because what happens that our looking at our friends or nature, trees, it becomes very mechanical. We don't feel much, as if we say, oh, yes, I have seen that, what is there to look at. Just like a little girl, I showed her the firecrackers in the sky during Diwali time, and I called her and said, look, there are beautiful, colorful patterns in the sky due to these firecrackers. And she was going to school. She was about 7, 8 years old. And she said, oh, haven't you seen that? And she went away. So we lose the art of looking, listening at a very young age. After we go to school and we acquire a lot of knowledge, and everything becomes very intellectual. And it happened to me also that, yes, when I was young, I used to look at the rose flower, very beautiful. But then I went to engineering, went to America, so many problems. Mind is flooded with so many problems. Then you cannot look at a rose or a human being, the beauty of a human face where the feelings are continuously changing. So, but it is possible to get back to that way of looking when we were very young, when we looked at a butterfly and we were not asking questions, but just looking. In the same way, this art of looking is the art of looking either at a tree or a star, sunset, or our own thoughts. And in that, there is a real beauty. So Krishnaji talked a lot about beauty, love, about life. And this became very, very interesting for my life for many years. And I was writing letters to Krishnamurti describing my experiences, but I never asked question because even if a question comes, a genuine question, one has to look at one's own question and not answer, but just look what it unfolds. So that is the real art of looking, listening when somebody is speaking. How do I listen? Is my mind so much interpreting what the other person says, and I said he is right or he is wrong, and I want to answer very quickly or to correct that person, or I can just listen when the person has finished, and when there is a space, when there is a silence, one can answer if one wants to answer a question. So this questioning is not a method in my case, because it is like sometimes when you ask a question, your mind stops, but then again it wanders off, and then again you ask a question, and then again mind stops. So it becomes like a method, and I feel that it is not different than concentrating on an image of a god, and like Shiva, and the image remains in front of you, and there are no problems. But then the image fades and your mind wanders, and then again you bring back the image of Shiva. So it becomes like a method. So Krishnaji would call it a method, and I would call it a method when you have to try again and again to come to a certain state of listening or looking. So finally, Krishnaji was saying that when this understanding or seeing is very clear, very mature, then there is no effort, and there is a onless, effortless awareness goes on. And even when one becomes unaware, one knows about it, and one doesn't make an effort to let the mind go wherever it wants to go without any control, but just looking at it. So there is no problem in creating an image. In my view, if you want to create an image, do create, but know that it is just an image. And if it helps you for some time, fine, but it is a method. And that method can help initially, but finally one has to be free from all such methods also. Okay, I have said enough. Thank you.
Very much, sir. Anybody can comment, ask by raising hand. Dinesh Waghmare. Come forward and ask. Dinesh Waghmare, come forward and ask.
Actually, I am having some observations, not questions this time. What I want to say, actually, in today's time, we should revisit this statement of holding the question. One has to really see from what level of his personality or his system the question is arising. Is it arising from his intellectual level, or from his is it related to worldly affairs? If it is related to worldly affairs, it is arising from the intellectual level, or it is arising from its emotional or feelings level. Then he should put all the efforts and he should get the answer as quickly as possible. If it is related to worldly affairs, there are so many answers and so many solutions are available in the world. So one should go for that. Yes, this feeling and emotions, this is a boundary line, and this is a subjective matter, and this is related to the individuality of the person. Yes, if he is not able to tackle the anger or greed or this thing, then he may stay with the question and he may remain with it and understand, because from that level, which is not which is at the boundary of the your time space plane, then he has to remain with the question and then wait for the insight or wait for the truth to come to him. But if the question is going beyond, even beyond, going beyond this, like it is related to awareness, choiceless awareness, or intelligence, or insight, then he has to remain with the question and find out the truth for himself. Because whosoever, whether it is Krishnamurti or whether it is scriptures, whosoever is giving the answers, that may not solve his problems. If we generalize the statement that one should hold the question, then if we see the teachings carefully of Krishnamurti, he has also given all the teachings are answers to some of the problems or questions arising in the world at that point of time. So he was having his own from his individual angle, he has given solution to most of the things, and he has seen some truths and he has shared it with the other person, and those are also a sort of answer to the questions. So, in my views, if the question is going beyond the time-space plane, it is related to, it is going beyond the intellect. If it is related to consciousness, if it is related to your intelligence, if it is related to insight, then yes, one should hold with the hold the question and to stay with it, find out the truth for himself, or let the truth come to him. That's what I feel. Thank you.
Chidanandji, would you please answer this? Would you please comment on this comment?
Well, we do respect some distinctions he has made, when to hold, when not to hold. And he began saying beautifully that we have to revisit this whole issue. Yes, we have to be authentic. We should not go blindly with anything that is said by Krishnaji in some book. Revisit, examine for ourselves whether we are sluggish in dealing with an issue or we are truly paying attention. So I see some merit in what the Dinesh Ji has said. Thank you.
Anand sir, would you please say whatever you have written? Anand sir. Anand sir, then Harsh Tankha. Anand sir. Please unmute and say.
So the question to Mr. Parikh, sir, how do I understand that imitation is form of violence? That is one. And to the previous person who said Krishnamurti giving answers, Krishnamurti has not given any answers to us, sir. He has not given any explanation. He always said that he acts like a mirror. How to understand that is a question, sir. It is not he who is speaking. It is, he said, I'm acting as a mirror. You don't see me, you are seeing yourself. That is what he has said. That is, he's the only person who is different from the rest of the other so-called saints and gurus. They always said what he should do, but he never said that. One has to observe that, sir. That is about all. Mr. Parikh, sir, when I say that I read from K and then I did it, I'm putting the question, sir. Isn't imitation is a form of violence? Oh, sir.
Yeah. Yes. Imitation is different than looking at oneself, because imitation means that you consider somebody as very high and you accept what that person says and then you try to follow that person. That is not what Krishnaji is talking about. Not to follow him, but to verify for yourself whether it is true that our problems are psychological nature, are coming from thinking, and from thinking this sense of I, me, which wants to understand. So how do you verify it? Even how do you hold on to a question? Because that requires the freedom to hold on to a question. It requires the real silence to observe oneself exactly what is happening within us. And when we really do it, we don't ask questions, we just look. But what I find that every time you are asking, can I look? You are asking that question because you are not looking. That's sorry, I am not trying to insult you or anything. But when you are really looking, there is no question. It's just looking.
So how do I understand questions are the answers?
One has to be really free to look. That's why Krishnaji says freedom is at the beginning. There is no method. If you are really deeply interested in understanding yourself, because we cannot understand other human beings, we cannot understand Krishnamurti, we cannot understand Ramakrishna, we can understand ourselves. And for that, one has to be, initially at least, one has to be alone, one has to be very, very attentive, one has to be silent, and passion to look within. Because most people don't want to look inside because it is very frightening. Even to be silent is very frightening. That's why we like to do something, read Krishnamurti or talk, discuss. That is because we don't really want to sit and look at ourselves very, very curiously.
Can
So
I
it has
ask
with the
another
passion,
question?
real passion. Yeah, real passion required.
Can I ask you another question, sir?
Yes, you can ask.
So when I say the freedom is in the beginning, how do I understand what freedom is? Like freedom, as I understand, within quotes I am saying,
Yeah.
only the freedom is there when there's care, when there's affection, when there's compassion. Do I have that is the question, sir. So without having that, if I speak about freedom, I'm back to my conditioning, isn't it? I'm saying what freedom should be.
Yeah. Yes. Freedom means there is no sense of self. There is no even feeling that I have love or compassion, anything like that. It is just looking. And there is no observer, not saying that I should have love and compassion. Not like that. That means there is this me wants to have love, compassion. And I have read about it, what Krishnaji said or something like that. So real freedom you can or one can understand only when it happens in one's life. And when it happens, you will feel that there is something different than your normal daily life. First time when it happens. And then you will ask, do I look different? I used to ask my friend, when I am looking, I used to ask my friend, do you see any change on my face? Because I was looking in a different way, the way I looked at the tree or the lake or the swan moving very gently, as if there was nobody there who was looking.
Can I ask a question, sir, here?
No, wait a minute, wait a minute. Harsh Tankha, sir, and then
Okay.
Harsh Tankha, sir.
Yes. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, very well.
Okay. I would like to stick with the question of questioning. That seems to be the question that you're asking. It's very easy to get deflected and distracted into all kinds of questions that seem to come out of this question. So just to stick with questioning. Firstly, I think we are talking about a kind of question which arises out of our trying to understand ourselves. And that is the kind of question we are talking, not as Swamiji was saying, and I say this lightheartedly, not the kind of question what is the capital of your country? Having said that, it's quite interesting because when Swamiji asked that question, I didn't have a response. Which is my country? I don't know which is my country. Even practically, I used to have an Indian passport, now I have a British passport. I'm equally at home in India and in England. I'm equally at home speaking Hindi, speaking English. And which is my country? And then why? I actually haven't got a concept of my country. And so there I was, even on a simple question like that. It went right down to, how do I think of myself? What is my image of myself? So I was right in there. So even these simple questions that you asked, Swamiji, about which is the capital of your country was not such an innocent question. Why should I identify with any country? I don't actually identify with any country. So that there are questions lurking behind even seemingly innocent questions. And there are questions about understanding oneself. Just to come at this from a slightly different angle. I taught 37 years at Brockwood. And one thing was very clear. I quoted this actually even in the last meeting as something that stays with me, because what was I doing? What's Brockwood Park School for? And this was what Krishnamurti said. He said, Brockwood is a place for learning. It's a place, I'm reading this now, for learning the art of questioning, the art of exploring. It is a place which must demand the awakening of the intelligence that comes with compassion and love. So this is what he was asking me personally, because 37 years I was teaching there. He was saying, this is what you're supposed to be doing here. People here, both staff and students, should be learning the art of questioning. And he was very clear about the importance of learning the art of questioning. And so this is something that, as you can imagine, over 37 years, not just from trying to figure it out intellectually, because I had to bring it into action in my daily life, in my communication with the students. How does one? What is the art of questioning? How does one explore? What does it mean to explore? How do you explore yourself? There are lots of questions in this area. So I think one of the first things to say, and I recall it because we discussed this a lot, is what first thing to ask oneself is, why am I asking this question? What is the motivation behind this? And it should be clear that when you're asking a question, if there is a motivation, if you have some kind of intent, that will direct your questioning. Like a detective who is interrogating, questioning a suspect. If he's convinced the suspect is guilty, he will ask his questions in a certain way. Your questioning is directed by a motive. And not only that, perhaps your question is coming out of thinking. Then the next question is your question a reaction? Which is somewhat similar. Something is happening and you're saying, oh, could it be different from this? You know, there's conflict in your life. Then you're asking yourself, oh, is there something without conflict? But that also may be a question that is not quite a right question. Krishnamurti was very strong about the right question. So perhaps the question is, how does conflict arise? What is the source of this conflict? Not, is there a state without conflict? So a right question is another part of asking a question. And then staying with the question. So first, if you're asking a right question, by a right question, I understand, I'm speaking from my understanding now. A right question is a question that has meaning for me in my life, in my inquiry. Maybe I have conflict in some relationship. And I see the importance of somehow, I don't know how, this conflict, I can see how destructive it is. So I have questions. So this is the first thing about the question, that in some sense it has to be a real question, that it connects with your own observation, not something that is asked casually, not something that is, and also a question where you start with the sense that you don't know, that we don't know what is going to be. So I want to find out. I want to find out what it is that is causing this conflict. Which means, as Harshad said, it means looking, it means listening, it means attention, it means being alert to what is going on in my life, to my own thoughts, to the thoughts of others. But so, in some sense, this question begins to generate that awareness. The fact that I have this question alive in me begins to generate my looking, my observation, my listening, and all of that. With Dinesh Ji, the other day, just a few days ago, we were talking about the ending of the self or the dissolution of the self, or you recall. Yeah. And at one point he said, so we must ask what it means for the dissolution of the self, because it seems to me that we need the self sometime. Does it mean end all thought? But if I was totally thoughtless, what would it mean? So at that point, it became a real question. I don't know what it means to dissolve the self, ending the self. Doesn't matter what words I use. The words are not important. What? It became an important question, because if I am to take seriously, which I think most people who are listening to this do, that this understanding oneself is a central thing in one's life, then I must ask this question: what is it to dissolve the self? How does something continue? In some ways, the self continues. I'm just putting the question. And if we're real about this question, it stays with us. It stays because we have seen its connection with and importance in all this action in our lives, to our whole life. When we see that, it stays with us as a question. To give a simpler example, I can ask the question, how should I educate my child? Which means I don't know how to educate my child. Which means I'm looking, I'm alert, When I hear about something, when somebody talks about somebody's giving a lecture on education, I move. The question begins to generate my action. The observation and the listening and the alertness begins to, it's not answers. It's not, I may not find an answer. I may listen to something. It may have some relevance. It may not have some relevance, but it begins to generate a kind of understanding. Now, Krishnaji once again was very clear about this. This questioning bringing about a state of observation and listening. And then that state of observation and listening, in that state of observation and listening, intelligence might arise. It arises. And so to actually stay with the question means that it is firstly a real question in that it connects with everything, that it's a real inquiry, that we know we don't know. It's on the edge of our understanding. So we don't know. And we want to find out. And we are serious finding out. And we feel that this question is important enough. Important means it connects with everything that we're doing. Otherwise, it's not important. So I think it's very important for us to be learning this art of questioning. Even if the questions we ask in this, why are we asking the questions we ask? What is our motive? Do we have some intention of going to the depth of this question with other people? It's wonderful to go into the depth of a question with somebody else. It's very difficult to stay focused on a question with a group of people, because that's what happens. We start to hold the question, and then something distracts us, and our attention moves away, and the question is lost. So this art of questioning and staying with the question is an important one to learn. I think that's all I need to say.
Arun Partha.
Hello, yeah. Good evening, everyone. I have a question to Harshad sir. Actually, you mentioned about Ramana Maharishi. You mentioned about the statement as who am I? The question as such, and that is a very deep question which I've asked myself once I got in touch with Ramana Maharishi. And the other question, if you see, it is you are the world, which JK mentions often. Like this is also a question which is a very deep question which I've asked myself. So, what one question which my own questioning which arises is these are two profound questions, and how does they? Are they related in any way? And can we, in our own observations, mix these questions and observe? Because I see these questions are really very thought-provocative, and it has been lingering in my head for a very long time. And I feel like how do we approach this? Like these intense questions, like are there some? Do we see any similarity between Ramana Maharishi questions and K's question? Thank you, sir.
Yes. Yes, I would say they are very similar, but Krishnaji is showing the whole process of our thinking mechanism, whereas Raman Maharshi is very direct and says, who am I? Now, when such a question is asked, what does one do? Because I think this is the fundamental question which dissolves all questions. And in that there is no questioning, no answering, but just looking at whatever is unfolding within your mind as well as what is outside. So Raman Maharshi is asking the right question, but Krishnaji is using many ways of bringing awareness to listeners, because Raman Maharshi may be good for somebody who is very quick in understanding what he is saying and doing it. Whereas Krishnaji also wants that way. Krishnaji also says, don't think about it, just do it and just look. So, but Krishnaji with many intellectuals, they go on and on for 1 hour, 2 hour discussing, and that kind of asking questions is good for making the brain sharp, but still it can remain at intellectual level, and one may not even go beyond the intellect where one can really look, because in that looking there is no questioning, it's just looking. So a good question, the fundamental question is the one which dissolves all questions and just looking. I don't know whether I answer your questions, but one has to really experiment with oneself initially in aloneness, but later on it can go on in relationship with everything. Okay, thank you.
Can I ask a question here?
Yeah, yeah.
Sir, I want to ask a basic question. Why do a question at all arise in anybody's psyche or anybody? Why question arise at all?
I think the question, Harsh, you would like to answer? Harsh?
Okay,
Huh?
I can
Let
try.
us answer.
I don't know. I think Dinesh ji is capable of answering that question himself. But I think there are many kinds of reasons actually, but actually one central one. See, I think Krishnaji raises all kinds of questions for us. I'm not sure they actually become our questions. You know, they sound interesting, they sound important, but they don't become our questions in the sense that we put all our energy behind them. As I said before, because they don't seem to be they seem to be only intellectually relevant to our life. They haven't got that urgent, passionate feeling of, oh my God, this makes a difference to my life. If you are, I don't know, but people reach a point in their lives when they're really questioning what life is about, regardless of whether they've heard Krishnamurti, where they don't know what to do, where they see things are around them are chaotic, they can't understand what's going on. And mostly these things, often you arrive at in the depths, often by yourself. You don't even find it possible to talk to people about it because you don't even know how to express these feelings. But they are very strong, powerful feelings within us that are actually a question. They're actually, how am I going to live? I mean, what is the right way to live? Shall I do this? Shall I do that? This seems wrong to do, but if I don't do it, this will happen. There are all kinds of dilemmas and things which we are faced with deep within us. So, and these give rise actually to fundamental questions of what is right, what is wrong, what is action, though we don't actually know how to even formulate these questions. And I think what people, one of the things that Krishnamurti is doing, and maybe even Ramana Maharshi, I don't know that much about, is he begins to formulate for us the questions that are in our minds. Otherwise, it makes no sense. If it's just him telling us what questions are, then it's just him telling us what these questions are.
But,
Yeah.
sir,
only
may
reason- Yeah.
I add one thing here?
Yeah.
Maximum time they are for the sake of question only. Nobody else can reply your fundamental question.
Yes.
Even he was asking, who am I? He means, who am I for Tankha? Who am I for Waghmare? Who am I for Harshad Parikh? Who am I for Chidanandji? Questions cannot be answered by others. If you
Yes.
say they are fundamental questions, you have to answer them. You have to find them. You have to dwell with them. You have to have patience with them. You are just putting them. You are putting them before group. It has got no meaning. At least what I think. Number of times those fundamental questions are being asked just to show your knowledge only. Generally, this happens. What I have felt with this.
Why do we
No, I
have
think-
dialogue, sir, then? Why do we have dialogue? Why do we have require the discussions then?
Yeah, may I say something?
Yeah. Please go ahead. Parikh sir,
Yeah.
please go ahead.
What we are discussing is actually, we are using many words, but actually doing it is non-verbal. And when we make these teachings verbal and trying to understand it, then it creates problem. So the real question is, when I read something or when I listen to somebody, do I understand it immediately, or then I ask more questions and go on discussing for a long time? Then it is intellectual. I like to say something about when Populji came to Rishivali after Krishnaji's death. We had a dialogue, and where I told her, because she gave a lot of importance to inquiry, asking questions, just like Krishnaji. So I told her that asking question is like dropping a stone on the quiet waters of a lake, and this stone, it creates ripples, and then you look at these ripples and you talk about it. So that is what all these dialogues are. Questions creates more questions, and it goes on like that, but never come to a state where we can really look non-verbally and there are no questions. But whatever is coming, we can see it. So Pupulji asked, are the waters always quiet? I said, no. Question arises when the waters are not quiet. So our questions are arising probably from the restlessness of our mind, and we want to find out something, and we have this sense of I who can find out, and because of that. So the real inquiries, what I understand from Krishnamurti or Raman Maharshi, is non-verbal, is looking at what is arising within us and not doing anything, what Krishnaji calls choiceless awareness. So not asking questions. Asking questions seems to me like an intellectual process. And Krishnaji encouraged that just because it makes our brain sharp. And if we don't ask questions, we can become very lazy and we can go into illusions. That's why Krishnaji says we must ask questions. Our brain should be very alert and not go to sleep and into imagination. That's why this questioning is, am I in illusion? That kind of question. Even Krishnaji asked to himself that it is something very vital illusion or something which was very real. He asked this question to himself. So questioning has value to make us not go into imagination, illusion, etc. But at the same time, questioning, if it is intellectual, it can go on for years without ever coming to see things non-verbally. Okay, I finish.
So
Sir,
is
please
there a questioning
conclude.
that is not asking questions and is non-verbal? I would like to ask you that. Questioning, which is, you could think of it as a questioning mind, as a mind that is in that state of questioning, not asking questions,
Yeah.
not verbal questions, but
Yeah.
just questioning.
No, I would say just 1 minute that even when you ask a question, you are limiting yourself to a particular thing, but just looking whatever is coming without asking question, because so many things are going on inside us and we are not able to see it clearly. So without asking question, can one look? That is what I'm saying. Whatever is coming and following its movement. It can be called moving with what is. And in that, there is a freshness. There is no duality between what is and what should be. No thinker and no thought.
So are you here saying something different from what Krishnamurti says?
Yeah.
You are. Okay.
I'm saying, but Krishnaji also says choiceless awareness. It means
No, he may
that
have
you
also
have the
said
choice.
that. So may I quote you Krishnamurti on this? I can.
Yeah.
Very well. It should be the last quote, sir. It is.
Yeah.
It should be a last quote, sir. Please.
Okay, I have to find it.
Yeah.
No. Krishnamurti says there is an art in it, isn't there? I must do it the right way. There must be a way of questioning that awakens the whole nature and structure of myself. So he's talking about a kind of questioning that, as he says, awakens the whole structure of myself. So I think we are right. There are certain kinds of questioning that doesn't do that. Verbal questioning, but then everything verbal can also be rooted on something that is non-verbal. As the word tree is not the tree. We can't stick with the word tree. We have to look at the tree. So the same thing with questioning. He's talking about something that actually, as I say, awakens the whole nature and structure of oneself. I think that's enough.
So what I think here, when I see something, I see a tree. Tree can immediately my minds make an image of it. Now that image may arise a thought, or that image may arise an insight. So both possibilities are there. That's what I think he's trying to point out. I'm asking Harshad whether it is right or.
I think
Yeah.
he's pointing to the tree. He says, "There's the tree. Look at it."
Yeah.
But then you are creating an image. Immediately image is.
Then he'll say,
created.
"Okay, the image comes second, so look at it without the image, before the image."
But I am seeing the tree, means something is happening to me, and that is image of tree.
But that's observation through thought. So this is the challenge. This is the challenge he puts to us. Is there something that is not of thought that is able to observe?
Okay.
This looking without images, that is what Krishnaji calls it beauty or love, in which
Absolutely.
even when you
Exactly.
look at Krishnamurti, you don't think that he is such a great person. Because when you have that image of Krishnamurti, then you have created the division between you and Krishnamurti.
Once I see a tree,
Yeah.
as soon as I sense it, it is image.
But the tree is still there.
Yeah.
Yes. But sensation itself is image, sir.
So yes, if you observe the formation of the image, that's also part of reality. If there's the tree, there's the image.
we should stay with this.
Do we have some time just for 2-3 minutes? Sushil ji? Sushil ji not there. Okay, I
Finally,
tell you something.
Final 3 minutes.
Okay, 2 minutes. In Rishi Valley.
Ravi G R has raised his hand. If there is some question with him, then
Okay.
Harshad sir and Harshad
Okay.
can- Ravi sir.
You were saying something, Parik sir? Please finish within 3 minutes. You were going to say
Okay.
something.
Yeah.
Please say
yeah.
for 3 minutes.
Yes. In Rishi Valley, there was a carpenter, and that carpenter did not know Krishnamurti. And Krishnamurti had come to the carpentry section and talked with this man. And this man, carpenter, was new to Rishi Valley. And then he thought he is just an old man. And then there was some work to be done in the guest house where Krishnaji was staying. And this man, no, first Krishnaji asked him to make some buttons for him. And this man made some buttons made of sandalwood. And Krishnaji liked it. And then after some time, there was some furniture was to be assembled. And Krishnaji and this carpenter, they both helped in assembling. And even then, this carpenter did not know who was Krishnamurti. And he had a very good time talking with Krishnaji. And after he went back, somebody told him that he is a great um, uh, spiritual teacher, world teacher. And then next time, when Moshe, this carpenter, went to see Krishnamurti, he began to look at Krishnamurti with a great reverence. And Krishnamurti felt that he has got now image. Krishnaji did not talk with him. So when there are images, we really don't have that feeling of real love, newness, freshness. We begin to look with our images, and that images prevents real relationship. And that relationship without images is what he calls love. And that love is very, very rare in our human existence. Okay, I have finished.
Ravi sir, you wanted to say something? Ravi sir, please unmute and say. Ravi sir. Ravi sir, you are raising hand. Please come forward and say.
This, can you hear me?
Yeah, we are able to hear you. We are
This
able to.
question
Please,
and
please go
answer,
ahead.
this
Please
question
go
and
ahead.
answer relationship is going on since 1995 with me. When one of scientists had come to our college and he had asked, can you prolong the life of your blade? Because on the blade wrapper, there was written on it, do not wipe it, do not rub it, do not rinse it. All the codes were broken by that guy, and he taught me how to decode the life, decode the things. I started decoding everything and I started asking the question one by one, and many of the questions were answered by my mind. Sometimes one day, 1 week, 1 year, or 20 years. So the question answer relationship is really good. And as Harsh Tankha said, that you should have the genuine question, you should have the real question. The seriousness of the answer depends on the questions, seriousness of the question, and that questions should come from within you, not a borrowed question. Like if I had asked that question, who am I, that didn't impact my mind. It didn't go. Didn't go in my psyche, and it couldn't affect my mind, because as far as I could understand, what is the difference between who am I, who is, and what is. The first question initiate an inquiry with entirety. Like I am asking the question, I am trying to find the entirety. Who am I? So you are the whole effort is to trying to find the entirety. And when you ask the question, what is, you are not trying to find the entirety. You are trying to understand the question itself. And understanding in the process of understanding the question itself, it unfolds you. Like recently, I am trying for last 1 month. What is? Initially, I couldn't understand the question itself. What is? Gradually, I could understand it, not fully, but it started giving some resonance to the mind, and that conscious effort went into my unconscious mind, and I started having surreal dreams, horror dreams, and that means that conscious effort affecting my unconscious mind. So, like questions like मुर्गी आई कि अंडा, सवाल आया कि जवाब, all the questions should be asked and the questions should be come from within. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, please, let's finish it. Kamlesh, it is already 7:39. Finish it.
Okay.